Jaylen Brown just dropped 40 on a Tuesday. Jordan Walsh, his offensive game is coming alive. And let's not forget about fourth quarter Derrick White. What's up, everyone, and welcome in to your Celtics source on this cold and rainy Tuesday night as the Boston Celtics take down the New York Knicks 123-117. They improve to a season-high 3 games above 500 at 12-9. But the most important thing is not the record, it's the way they're playing right now. And they've just beaten 3 out of 4 playoff teams in the Detroit Pistons right before Thanksgiving. They lose a close game to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then they go on and beat the Cavs and the Knicks. And they're showing us right now that they're not as bad as we thought. They are actually a good team. And with the energy and the buy-in that Joe Mazzulla is getting right now, this team has a chance to be a playoff caliber team without Jason Tatum. And then you put Jason Tatum in maybe at the end of the season, depending on how his recovery finishes up and how this team is looking. And you could get a team. Now, I'm not expecting Jason Tatum to be Jason Tatum, at that point in his recovery, right? It's going to take time. But if you could play him for a couple minutes and he just makes an impact on catch and shoot threes in a playoff game, you could win a round or maybe 2 in the Eastern Conference. But as for this game, we're going to talk about Jaylen Brown. We're going to talk about Derrick White. I want to talk a lot about Jordan Walsh's offense, which we continue to praise. Really, his whole game we continue to praise with how well he's playing right now. But I think we have to start with how this game got to where it got to, right? It's a 6-point game to end the game, but it really had a roller coaster sort of flow to it. The Celtics start off extremely cold. The New York Knicks, Jaylen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns they come out of the gate just flying. They get up to an 18-point lead within the first 4 minutes of the game, it felt like. And it stayed like that through the first quarter. It looked like one of those games where the Knicks just could not miss from 3. The Celtics went back to their struggling ways offensively, which we saw, down the stretch in that Minnesota game and in multiple games throughout the season. But things started to turn around in that second quarter. Jaylen Brown, after scoring just 5 points, or maybe it was even 4 points in the first quarter, he comes out and scores 19 points in the second quarter alone. Jaylen Brown has always been that second quarter guy, it seems like. He and Jason Tatum would split quarters on when they do most of the offensive load. But we have to remember, Jaylen Brown is playing by himself out here in terms of his load offensively, right? He doesn't have Jason Tatum with him anymore for the foreseeable future. He gets contributions occasionally from Derrick White, from Peyton Pritchard, from increasingly Jordan Walsh, and he gets a good, solid of points from pick and roll with Namiás Keita as well. But he is the driving factor offensively. And he hasn't missed a game. He's playing 40 minutes a night, coming off of injuries. It's just super impressive what he is doing on a team that, without Jaylen Brown, would be one of the worst teams in the league. Now, I don't think they'll be as bad as some of the teams like the Pacers, who are also missing their star and have a much sort of shorter bench than the Celtics do. With the Celtics actually bench right now outscored the Knicks in this game, but they played and have been playing pretty well as of lately. We'll touch on Anthony Simons later in the show. But back to Jaylen Brown. At some point, he has to get a rest. And it seems like there isn't a great opportunity to find a way to rest him. Now, you play the Wizards on Thursday. That could be an opportunity to rest him, but I'm sure he doesn't want to rest. And he's definitely going to play Friday against the Lakers. But he's scoring 40 points a night. In this game, 2 of 6. Nope, that's different player. Jaylen Brown, 16 of 24 from the field. Super efficient. He actually does go 2 of 6 now that I'm looking at it. From 3, makes 8 of 9 free throws. I think that's super important to point out, the fact that he's getting to the line and then he's not missing tons of free throws. Now he is at around 76% on the season, which is not great. That definitely needs to get up, given that he is not getting to the line that often, and when he does, he needs to capitalize. But it seems like Jaylen Brown, he has a game where he's super efficient and goes for 40. And then he'll have a game where he is not super efficient early on. He doesn't have the shot going. He's still going to score 20 points for you, and he'll bring up the rebounding and the playmaking, right? When he has it rolling, he doesn't need to be making assists for others because he is the driving factor offensively. But we saw in that Cavs game, he didn't have a great game shooting-wise, and he found Peyton Pritchard. He just kept feeding the hot hand as Peyton Pritchard continued to knock down shot after shot. So I just like the way that Jaylen Brown is, not being taken out of a game when things are not going well for offensively for him. He is finding a way to impact the game without his scoring, without the raw shooting, by not even having the ball in his hands, just bringing it up the court and finding a guy on a screen pass or pick and roll with Keita for a lob. All the things that Jason Tatum was extremely good at, and Jaylen Brown, it seems like, is learning on the fly, because the last couple of years, when Jaylen Brown's been out on the court by himself, it hasn't gone great. He's been prone to turnovers. He's been prone to sort of putting his head down, tunnel vision, and not finding his teammates, trying to go through multiple guys to the lane and missing shots. And his career is completely turning around with this season. I hope that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown stay together, and this is definitely not a conversation for today, but I just think that Jaylen Brown, despite Jason Tatum maybe being the number one guy when he's back, Jaylen Brown is so valuable to this team in ways that you just don't see in the box score. All right, I want to move on to some of the other guys on this team. But first, I do think we have to quickly talk about how this game got as close as it did. Right? I kind of stopped at the second quarter here. But the Celtics, in the third quarter, get out to that 20-point lead, like the Knicks had in the first half, on shooting from Peyton Pritchard, shooting from Sam Hauser, shots from Derrick White, Jaylen Brown, picking up where he left off in the first half. But then the Knicks start to claw back in. And the Knicks claw back into this game on one guy and one guy alone. Yes, Karl-Anthony Towns, had a solid night, finishing the game with 29 points, 2 of 6 from 3, 12 of 20, with 7 rebounds. But it was Mikel Bridges in the third and fourth quarter that single-handedly kept the Knicks in this game. This game could have been a 40-point game blowout had Mikel Bridges not done what he did. In the second half, scoring I think, all but 4 of his 35 points on 8 of 12 3-point shooting. And none of these threes were great wide open threes. Some of them were highly contested threes, sort of pull up in your face threes that Derrick White sometimes likes to take. When it's in the fourth quarter, obviously Derrick White knocks them down because Derrick White is just the fourth quarter king. At least in this game. Now, I keep saying that, hoping that he will continue to be the fourth quarter king, because quite frankly, he hasn't been that this season, and it's been a pretty big disappointment. But we'll talk about White in just a second. Mikel Bridges, these shots that he was taking, I talked about the pull-up threes. Threes where he was on the move, sidestepping, pulling up these threes on 1 foot, LaMelo Ball type style, where he doesn't even stop to set his feet. He just dribbles and takes it on the move. Just incredible, just heat wave that he was on in this game, which, the Knicks do finish, 43% from 3. The Celtics sort of down 32%, which is really where they've been all season. But the Celtics do finish the game 56% from the field, which means they were up in the high 70s, most likely, from mid-range, right? The Celtics are great in that mid-range area throughout the season, really. Jaylen Brown, particular, cleanups from Jordan Walsh from the corner, Josh Minott with these putback dunks. These plays where, they're doing a great job, Peyton Pritchard as well, of hitting these, contested mid-range shots that, the Celtics are still taking a number of threes. They are down from last season for sure, and their efficiency, of course, is way down. But they're bringing back the mid-range shot, the shot that I thought Joe Mazzulla hated, where he hates that math on a mid-range shot, right? But it just seems like it's working for this team, and Joe Mazzulla has, decided that he's going to forego, they still take a number of threes, but he's going to forego, the plan of only shooting threes, and take, he always says, take the best shot, and that is what it is, right? The mid-range shot is the best shot for the Celtics right now with the guys they have on the court, right? Jordan Walsh, he's hit a couple threes lately, but he's more of a, crash the paint kind of guy. Namiás Keita doesn't shoot threes. Ugo Gonzalez, Josh Minott, Josh Minott is shooting 40% from 3, but he doesn't take a bulk load of threes, right? He only takes, a couple of game. I do actually want to talk quickly about Josh Minott, sort of getting off on a little bit of a side note here, but he is quietly, it's not every game that he's putting up, double-digit points and whatever, but he's quietly knocking down threes at a rate that we didn't think we were going to get from this team. After playing less than 5 minutes a game for the Wolves over the last couple of seasons, he comes in, he had a couple starts early on, he plays a similar role of Jordan Walsh, and with the way Jordan Walsh is playing right now, it makes sense to keep him in the lineup, but they are pretty interchangeable offensively, and he comes in, and just impacts the game on both ends of the floor with these corner threes that he's getting, bailing out, bad possessions from Derrick White, Jaylen Brown, cleaning it up, right? There's not a lot of, drive and kick from this team right now because they're realizing that it's just a better shot to go up and score around the rim, even if it's contested, than kicking it out because of the way the Celtics are shooting right now. But on these possessions where they have no choice but to kick it out, Josh Minott is filling that void. But let's get back to where we were on how Mikel Bridges, if it weren't for Mikel Bridges, this game would have been out of hand so quickly. And that's really because of the, you know, what Jaylen Brunson was doing offensively, or more, what was lacking from his game, right? He really looked asleep. I don't know if he was just tired or, they have a back to back tomorrow, but it's the front end, so it shouldn't have been a problem in terms of energy. But he just didn't look great. He had a bunch of bad passes, turnovers late in this game, which cost him. Right, he only scores 15 points in 39 minutes. Goes 1 of 8 from 3, so just a horrific shooting night from him. 6 of 21 overall. He does have 11 assists, right? Very similar to Jaylen Brown in the fact that when it's not going well for him scoring wise, he can find a way to impact the game in other ways with that playmaking. But that being said, you go 6 for 21 and you're playing 39 minutes. It's still going to be a liability for you out there. Now, I think this isn't an anomaly. He's not going to ever, he'll have games like this, but they're few and far between with the all NBA player that Jaylen Brunson is. But I think that very much had to do with their loss tonight, along with Karl-Anthony Towns continuing to complain about calls. Really, the whole Knicks team, I think, they weren't staying focused in the game. They were focused on some of the calls they weren't getting. Now, I hate talking about this stuff because my Celtics continue to not get calls, specifically Jaylen Brown, so I want to leave the refs out of it. But there were calls definitely on both sides that could be called, and I guess you could say they do cancel each other out with with them being on both sides. But I think we have to move on to Derrick White, because what Derrick White has been this season has been a shocker, I think, to most people. He has these games where he scores like he does in this game, and he has 22 points, 4 of 12 from 3, 8 of 16 overall, right? Continues, that 3-point shooting continues to be a super big problem. But he's now making shots around the rim, which is something that he wasn't making at the beginning of the season at all. Right? At the beginning of the season, he wasn't making a single shot from anywhere on the court. And now he is making mid-range shots. He's hitting just enough threes to, still be guarded with a top NBA defender on the other team, or at least, paid attention to, right? He's not going to be left alone offensively. And he's knocking down these threes in the fourth quarter, which is when it matters most. Derrick White's always been that fourth quarter guy. He has these slow games, and then he'll finish the game with like 20 points because he'll shoot 4 threes and make all 4 of them in the fourth quarter. But, well, not but. I guess this game, it was really much the same from him, where he's not shooting the 3 well, and then he makes 2 or 3 in the fourth quarter to ice this game, basically, before it went into the back and forth with free throws and fouling and whatever. I don't really count that stuff. Technically, this game isn't a crunch time win. Actually, it might have been a crunch time win because I know the game got down within 4 points at some point. I don't remember the exact time it changes. But after starting the season with a pretty bad crunch time record, they have brought that crunch record up. They, I don't know what their total record is right now. I'd have to look that up. But they're now, finding their chemistry. They're finding a way to get stops and make shots late in games. And that's why this team is 3 games above 500, which in the Eastern Conference, I think will finish you either the 7th seed or maybe in the playoffs when it's all said and done, with how low the East is. And some of the top teams in the East definitely are pretty high with what the Knicks were. Well, Knicks are still are, and the Detroit Pistons, of course, which the Celtics have beaten both. So that shows you that this team can hang. They just need to stay consistent with the offense scoring wise in every game, in every quarter. They can't give up offensive possessions when they just don't have the shooting right now, and quite frankly, they have the talent, but the playmaking is considerably less than some of the other teams right now. Right? Defense, we came into the season saying that was going to be the problem with this team. It's been completely the opposite, a full 180 of what we had thought. The defense looks fantastic right now. The rebounding is not a problem. There are a couple games where it becomes a problem just because of the size that the Celtics have on the court, but they're going small when they have to and just playing physical that way. They're not getting, when they're facing these really tall teams, it's been much better when they go small instead of trying to play two centers in Garza and Keita, because Garza, he's unplayable right now with his offense and quite frankly defensive production as well. Keita's been terrific. He's taken that, year 3 leap with this team. Obviously, it's not his third year in the league. He's been around for a while. But with this team, he is improving on both ends of the floor. Jordan Walsh as well. We're going to get to him in just a second. But staying on the Keita thing, it's something that we didn't expect was going to happen so soon. We knew he had a huge step up this season with having really no other centers around you and being the 1A guy. He has just come in, and at first, he was struggling to, stay away from cheap fouls that were just not worth it and getting out of position. And now he's not fouling on drives to the basket by opponents, and he's getting in the right position to either box out and allow his teammate to get in or go up strong and get the rebound himself. And he's turned this season around just with his work on the defensive end. And now he's getting out of screens quickly offensively as well, and that allows him to get to the basket and either post up or catch a lob from a Jaylen Brown and Derrick White, which he had multiple in this game. He does have 8 points in this game, but we've seen games where he has 20 points. We saw a game where he had 19 rebounds, a double-double of 20 points, 19 rebounds the other day. I forget which game it was exactly. He's not turning the ball over. He's giving you offensive rebounds. He's giving you defensive rebounds and just impacting winning plays on both ends of the floor. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you could be so kind as to subscribe, like, and share this video with others, that would be much appreciated. Alright, I want to move on to Jordan Walsh, and then we'll quickly talk about Anthony Simons and a couple little things before we wrap it up here on this instant reaction. But as for Jordan Walsh, it's his 9th consecutive game where he is starting. And the offense is something that I don't think anybody could predict coming into this season. He hasn't played his first 2 years in the NBA, and we're finally seeing what he can be on that end of the floor with the occasional threes that he knocks down. That's one thing. That's something that I think is going to be up and down. If he can be a 35% three-point shooter, maybe not even that, maybe 32% three-point shooter, that's huge for him. But if he's going to be strong, dunking the ball, finishing through contact, he had a play to end this game where he fakes the three in the corner, gets, I think it was Jaylen Brunson to, fly by him, and then drives from the corner into the paint and has to go through two guys. The ball almost gets, blocked almost, he has to go with the ball through a defender's hand and gets the bounce. Just terrific finishing around the rim right now. Something that we just could not see, right? These last couple of seasons, he would be missing these easy open dunks, or he just would smoke a bunny, and now he's finishing all these plays and some, and it's just terrific to see his improvement. He can be your sixth man of the year for sure next season, maybe even starting, because I actually love the way he could fit with a Jason Tatum when he comes back. But that's just one side of the ball. We all know about what he does defensively as well, guarding the best player on the opponent's on the opposing team. Why am I at a loss for words here? But it's his way that he does it all night long. The energy from him, he never gives up. He doesn't guard the player for every single possession, but he's guarding Brunson for most of the game. He gets switched on to Cat multiple times and does terrific on that as well. He's giving up a lot of size, but he holds his ground, stays strong, and what he does best is something that he's not going to get credit for in the box score. It's his ability to slow a defender down so much and make him turn his back to the basket, turn his back to the basket as he tries to, back his way in, right? A guy like Karl-Anthony Towns I'm talking about, where he tries to back his way in against Jordan Walsh, and Jordan Walsh holds his body so well that he gives time for Derrick White to come over and block the ball, or a Namiás Keita to come over and grab the ball for a jump ball. Stuff that is not going to show up in Jaylen Brown or in Jordan Walsh's box score, right? But he's finding ways to force an opponent into his help, which there are so many talented players in the NBA right now. You're not going to be able to guard a Jalen Brunson specifically on every possession. There are going to be possessions where he's just going to get by you because he's just that good offensively. But Jordan Walsh can limit those by forcing the opponent into help defense, where it's a 2-on-1 instead of a 1-on-1, and then Jordan Walsh has a much better chance of defending that play. I do want to finish up talking about Anthony Simons. There are some games that are just not for Anthony Simons when you have a guy like Jalen Brunson who can just attack him so much on that end of the floor, right? ISO him out and just go at him, and Anthony Simons has historically not been a good defender. In fact, he's been absolutely terrible historically, but it's been a little bit different this season. I think the culture of this team, the information that Joe Mazzulla is putting in him, and his realization that if he doesn't play defense, he's not going to play, has turned him into by no means a good defender, by no means, an average defender, but up a good amount from where he was entering the season. And that has allowed him to then be out there to provide what he does best, which is that offensive production, specifically with the second unit, right? This year, you don't have a Peyton Pritchard coming off the bench. You don't have a Luke Cornett and Al Horford coming off the bench. It's really just him, with a bunch of, I guess, you could say 3-and-D players. They don't really shoot threes, though. They're more of a defense-only type players. Now, I'm looking at guys like Jordan Walsh, Ugo Gonzalez, Josh Minott, who some of those, as I said, Jordan Walsh is changing that. Josh Minott has some ability offensively, but they're mostly out there for defense. And it's really Anthony Simons' time to shine. But he doesn't get the opportunity when he just gives up the points that he gets right back on the defensive end. He's still playing limited minutes. He's not playing, more than 30 minutes a night most nights. There are some nights which work well for him. There are some nights which don't. This is a game, though, where you wouldn't think he'd be able to play. But his impact, or his ability more likely, to just not get absolutely smoked by Jalen Brunson allows him to be out there and help this team. But yeah, I'm going to wrap it up here. We have talked for about 30 minutes here on a game that the Boston Celtics proved they are definitely a contender in the Eastern Conference. I think so. They still play the Wizards. You can hopefully get that win, get 3 in a row, improve to 4 games above 500, and then a big test against the Lakers, which I don't think anybody will have the Celtics winning. But that being said, LeBron does look a little bit older right now, tired sometimes, and not playing great. And their offense, despite having LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves, is up and down. So the Celtics could catch them sleeping, hopefully. But as for this game, once again, the Celtics win 123-117. Jaylen Brown has a 40-point game on the dot. Peyton Pritchard, I know we didn't talk a lot about him. Just an okay night for him. Does hit a couple threes. Wasn't the storyline of this night. Jaylen Brown, Derrick White, hit some timely threes despite continuing to shoot a rock, basically. But that being said, the Celtics are, I think, 7th now in the East, which coming into these last couple games, they were 11th, not even in the play-in, and now after 3 games, just look where they are. So this team is flying high, and they need to continue the vibes on Thursday night against the Washington Wizards.